Just a brief introduction, this is a formal hearing that is required whenever the district safety plan is revised, or at least annually we have to review this and vote on it. So, following 2 district safety meetings, team meetings and school level meetings, the revised district safety plan and the school emergency response plans are introduced. It should be mentioned that we have a total of 3 plans. Tonight's meeting is addressing the hearing is addressing the district plan only. So for the plan overview, Dr. Catania, would you like to do the overview?
Sure. First, let me say that this is this one document. These 3 documents, but the one that we're going to discuss tonight is the culmination of many hours of discussions and work and more really, because these are challenging, difficult times, and therefore people become very invested in ensuring that we are doing right by our students and our community when we develop these plans. And so we had a number of people involved in this year's process, as we always do. A few of them are in the room right now. Jeff is on that team. Thank you, Jeff. Dana is on that team. And Elise Stosiak is on the team as one of the elementary school representatives. So thank you to all of you. And
Liam as well.
And Liam is on the team.
I'm on the team. Yes. Absolutely.
Sorry, you were back there.
Good recovery.
So anyway, I just want to thank everybody who was involved. There were many more people involved in this process. So in terms of the plan itself, so the reason why the district plan is the public document, and the school plans are confidential documents because they contain much more private information. So the district plan tends to provide sort of generalities in terms of in terms of what you might expect in our school plans, although there are some different elements. And I'm just going to go through some things pretty quick. There's a table of contents so you can see really quickly what's in there. There are, you would have to look at the one online there. That's where to get it from. So you're going to see some general introductions. You're going to see a few things that are always changed, like the dates, and so some of these things are very minor. Some of the changes to this plan are very minor. If I'm on page 5. If you were to look at section 2, risk reduction, prevention, and intervention, these are pretty important sections, and it does talk about things that we do, broadly speaking, to practice prevention. So if you look at program initiatives, for example, number 1, assemblies to discuss pertinent issues, interventions by teachers, counselors, psychologists, teaching assistants, and administrators, group discussions led by psychologists, counselors, and teachers, advisory groups, character education programs like PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports, and LPCC, the Lake Placid Connections for Change. The CYC program, our DASA policy. Many aspects of school practice go into prevention programs, prevention strategies. So our safety plan is not just about going into lockdown if there's a violent event. Our safety plan is about far more than that. And I just think it's really important that people know that we're actually living these plans every day. If you were to go to page 6, you would see an implementation of school security. Now you're talking about intervention, right? Now the specifics aren't here because the specifics are in the school plans, but you would see an implementation of school security, some general procedures at each school. And I won't go through them all, but for example, number 1, all outside doors will remain locked during the day. Visitors may access the schools through the main entrance. Office staff screen visitors prior to admitting entrance. That's a given every day. Every door is accessible with an exit. Signs at the main entrance direct visitors to report to the office. Those kinds of things. Number 7, cameras and monitors be strategically placed. That's taken on a whole new meaning with our new camera program. So, so that's in there again. So when people want to know what are we doing for school safety, again, in generalities, this covers a lot of ground. I'm just going to skip ahead because again, it's just an overview. If you look at page 12, for example, actually, not page 12. Look at page 10, for example. So there are a lot of things that are addressed in the school plans in great specificity that are that are mentioned here. But to get an idea about what's in these school plans, you can look at, for example, B, situational responses, multi-hazard responses. So the school plans are pretty thorough, and we didn't come up with these out of our own ideas. A lot of this is suggested to us through more general templates, and we do follow some general procedures and practices. But in terms of the emergencies that are in those school plans, they include all of these things: threats of violence, civil disturbance, fire and explosion, systems failure, school bus accident breakdown, hostage kidnapping. So yes, these are in there. We hope we never have to respond to most or all of these, but you never know, right? So we are prepared for a number of things, and they are in these plans. If you were to go to, for example, page 12, now you're looking at those organizations that we rely on for support. So we've got a list of them, we've got their phone numbers. Question came up about the phone numbers. How come we don't have like cell phones and email addresses and those kinds of things? Remember, the district plan is meant to be the public plan, so these are the public phone numbers. The private phone numbers are in the school plan, so we can reach people more closely and access them in the more detailed plans. But so this is, again, this would pertain to us. It could, generally pertain to other districts, but like Classic Police Department's in here, the state police, the Essex County Emergency Services. These are groups that we rely on, and many of these groups participate in developing our plan. So they're all in on it. What else? 14. I wanted to point out one thing here. So our plan, we tend to think about intervention when something is happening, but in fact, our plans also address post-incident responses, and these can be very, very sensitive aspects of the plan, because after some kind of potentially traumatic situation, our students and our staff and sometimes our community members want to know how we're going to help, how we're going to help support, right? So for example, if there's been an accident, if there's been we hope not, but some kind of death in the immediate school community, this is hard on people, and so our post-incident response involves, we often refer to just as the crisis team. Our crisis team, made up in many parts of counselors and other helping professionals, are ready and have put together these plans to respond to the needs of our students or staff, whomever. So we have that in there, and that's, again, generally outlined here. It's much more specific in greater detail in the school plans. I'm just going to point out maybe 3 more things, maybe 2 more things. So you can see, again, a lot of the revisions end up being, this plan doesn't look that different from last year. A lot of the revisions are contact information, the names of individuals that may have changed, phone numbers that may have changed. But if you look at page 22, Appendix 7, we added this last year. There was no Appendix 7 before last year's plan. There is one now. And Appendix 7 is directed to additional considerations for district plan. In other words, we wanted to list what's changed, right? And so in this Appendix 7, I remember last year we had, I think, the first 4 or 5, which were really clarifications on when we lock down, when we use hold in place, those kinds of things. This year we added a few more things. Let me just go to number 5. 5 is information on risk and protective factors. This was actually added last year. Information on risk and protective factors will be provided to families at the start of every school year. That was not a part of the plan 2 years ago. It was added last year. 6, recent additions to our district-wide safety initiatives include online reporting service and anonymous alerts, which allows any student, staff member, family member, or community member to report their concern anonymously. That was an addition we made in practice last year to the plan this year. And then 7, safety improvements to school building infrastructure have been included in a recent capital building project. These improvements include new security entrances, impact-resistant glass on all first floor outside windows, and where appropriate, new protective glass on interior doors and windows. Again, those were not included in the plan, but we all know we've been putting together a capital project that is going to be underway pretty soon. And so that also is a part of things. Last thing I guess I'll point out is on page 23, I did mention that there's information available, so that these are public plans. They are meant to support people and help and inform. Risk and protective factors, these are terms that you may have heard before. Certainly if you're a school person, you hear this because this is part of the SAVE law against violence. And so risk factors are trying to identify those aspects of a child's life that could put them at risk for being involved in a number of things, including some dangerous situations. And so those are all there: individual risk factors, family risk factors, peer and social risk factors, community risk factors. You can see in there. The second part of that is protective factors, and it's also recognizing that just because a student is struggling in some of these areas, history of early aggressive behavior, or low parental education and income, just I'm throwing out a couple, that doesn't mean that they can't overcome those. And so individual protective factors are meant to recognize that there are aspects of That's Glenn James. That these are things that these are qualities in a child or a young person, an adult also, that can help them overcome some of those risk factors. And again, there's reference to other information here. So again, the public document is meant to provide the public with an idea of how we respond without great specificity, and also provide some ideas for learning more about how children and youth interact in this whole situation. It's complicated, it's very human, and it's tough for our teams to deal with. Our teams want to do real well, and we work both at each school level as well as at the district team to try and put something together that's meaningful, not just a piece of paper for the shelf, and to really walk away with feeling like we're doing better every year. And we've been doing that in the last few years. So that's an overview of the plan. Any comments or questions?
Any comments from our guests?
And I should also let you know that this plan's been posted online for the last 30 days, which is what's required for a public hearing. So it is possible, the potential of this hearing is that people will come having read the plan and having some feedback. And that's what section 3 of the agenda was intended to be, to offer opportunities for guests to provide comments.
Have you gotten any comments?
No.
Any comments from the board?
Well, excuse me, Rick. I did want to bring this up again. I don't know if I should do it now or at the end or at the old business. I had brought up a couple of times that a parent approached me a few weeks ago about elementary playground safety, whether or not there's anything we can do about it or not, but now that we're discussing this safety plan, this parent brought up to me that the openness of the playground was a concern. I mean, I understand that we can't barricade everything, but just looking at the safety plan about the infrastructure changes that we're doing to the elementary school, fortifying the entrances, the lower windows on the building, but then the playground is fully exposed where we have children out there 3 hours a day that are out running around. And maybe this is the time to bring it up because the safety committee is all here, and I'm just wondering how I respond to this individual should she approach me again. I don't know. I don't know if there is anything that we can do or should do. I mean, the high school seems to have a little bit more of a buffer around the building just because of structurally how it sits on the property. And as I've said before, you pull into the elementary school, the upper level, you pull in, you walk up to the main door, and eventually we're going to go through, a series of doors to get into the building, as we should. but you could literally walk 30, 40 feet around the side of the building to the lower parking lot, and anybody can pull in there and get out, and there's nothing to stop them. So, I don't know, I just thought I would bring that up.
So you did bring this up a couple of meetings ago, and so one of the things I did is had a conversation with the principal, Sonia Franklin.
Okay.
And, she said that one thing that, she thinks would be the right approach would be at the next meeting of the school team, the elementary school team, to at least provide some feedback on, what we think we're doing right now. And I think that's a good place to start. None of that became a part of these plans. These plans were developed well before that issue came up, but it's at least something that I think we can begin conversations about.
I just felt obligated that I needed to bring it up. I just, so anyway.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, I'll move to adjourn the formal hearing. And with that, we will start the opening of the regular meeting. So we'll call to order the regular meeting. I'll stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first order of business is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda is 7A, minutes of the November 20th board meeting. 8A, teaching staff non-maternal parental leave request. 8B, teaching staff maternity leave request. 9A, budget calendar approval. And 9C, special education. Is everybody okay with those items on the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. If so, I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0 against. The consent agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is proposed executive session. Recommended action is a motion to enter into executive sessions for the purpose of discussing the employment of certain personnel. May I have a motion to enter executive session, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Jeff. Second.
Yes.
And all in favor?
Aye.
7-4-0 against. Excuse us for our executive session. We'll get you as soon as we're back in session. Perfect.
Yeah, we're going to put some chairs up front for the kids.
For just a minute, we're going to go into an executive session and we'll come back in.
Back on, I like it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is for the good of the cause. The Board of Education encourages public participation on school-related matters at these board meetings. This is to allow public participation, and the period will not exceed 30 minutes and set aside at each board meeting. Persons wishing to address the board should please state their name, a brief description of the topic to be discussed, and provide information on the sheet located at the meeting sign and table. Presentation should be brief. Speakers may comment on any matter related to district business and any agenda item. I also might add that this period of time is not a time to receive feedback or expect answers to questions, but purely for a comment period. Anybody like to address the board? I will read that again. Very good. Okay, moving right along, reports for the board. Do you want to give them a minute, or?
I think we're good.
You all set?
All set? Okay.
Okay. Just go ahead.
So I'm actually going to introduce Teresa Lindsay, the
Sure.
middle school principal. who is going to then introduce our students who are here for the student liaison visit.
Have a seat.
Have a seat, we're friendly.
So I want to thank you all for having us here tonight. As you know, we just finished our third, believe it or not, third annual trip down to DC, thanks to the generosity of Caroline Lucy and the $900,000 that she has given to us, which has been an amazing gift. A lot of work from the team went into this trip, as it does every year. This trip was definitely a little more unique for us because we wanted to switch it up. In the past, we went, the first time we went at the end of March, no, I'm sorry, beginning of May. Then last year we went at the end of March and we hit every single weather pattern that you can think of. We came back in a snowstorm, but we made it. So this year we decided to move it to the beginning of the year. So we did go down to DC in October. And we wanted to use it instead of the traditional bonding that the 8th grade does with the kids. We plan a packed schedule, and I'm sure that Dan, thank you for coming with us this year, Dan, we appreciate it. Dan's second time with us. The schedule is absolutely packed, and these kids are coming back to the 4-H, which is where we stay, absolutely exhausted. We do take charter buses down. We take 2 charter buses, one for the boys and one for the girls. We like to separate them because the bathroom situation that's on the bus is one of the main reasons. And I'll let you just think and process that thought. And as soon as we get down there, we hit the ground running. We drop our bags off at the 4-H, and then we end up going and taking a trolley ride at night and hit several of the monuments on Sunday night. And then, of course, we have a full day Monday and a full day Tuesday with visits to the Capitol, Arlington Cemetery, several museums, and the newseum, which I'm sure one of these guys is going to explain. And then we hit the ground running coming back early on Wednesday morning. And it is an amazing trip, and it's interesting how each of these 3 groups thus far that we've taken have all connected to something very different on the trip. But generally speaking, it's been an overall fabulous experience for all of them. So I'm going to introduce you to our speakers tonight. This is Andrew Scanio, Alex Wright, and James Howell. And I've asked them to really just share 3 things with you. 1 is really what their highlight of the trip is. 2 is something that they think that we could improve on the trip, because that is definitely one thing that the team is continuously doing. We, at the end of the trip, ask for lots of reflection from these guys and feedback. And they have filled out survey upon survey upon survey and questionnaires prior to and after, so that we can take their feedback and adjust accordingly. And then the 4th thing is something they learned about themselves or something they learned on the trip. So which one of you want to start? Don't all jump. You want to start, Alex? Okay, awesome. Awesome. So Alex, you want to stand? Okay, awesome, thank you. So 3 things, right?
Yeah.
What's your highlight?
Okay, so the highlight of the trip was probably either the museum or the FBI museum. The museum, the reason for that is we get to learn about how all of the news reporters managed to capture the news in all of those times, like 9/11. There was an exhibit on that. There was like a green screen room where you could be your own news reporter, and that was very fun. And the FBI museum was very fun because we got to learn about the Boston Marathon bombing and how they hid in the boats. That was one of the big exhibits they had, and we got to learn. There was this one room where there were cameras hidden behind paintings, and you had to figure out where they were. So that was very fun.
Something you learned about yourself and or on the trip?
Okay, so probably I learned that, well, 1, the trip was very fun. It was a very good experience, and I learned that there was a lot that I didn't already know about Washington, D.C. that I actually thought I did. For instance, a lot of the monuments I didn't think were in Washington, D.C. Some of them I thought were in New York City or something like that. So that was something.
What's the one thing you would change it for next year that we need to do
Well,
differently?
some of the museums, like I love the Smithsonian's, but one thing about the Smithsonian's was we didn't get much time to look in them. Like only around, I think it was 30 minutes per. I went to the Air and Space and the American Indian, and we only got to look at like 2 exhibits fully of the Air and Space. So that was what I would change.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Who'd like to go next? Andrew, James? Oh, Andrew, thanks. Highlights? What was your favorite part?
I agree with Alex on the museum. It was actually very cool, and I liked how it explained all of like modern events that happened, and I learned a lot about those events, and I found it actually really interesting. I think. And
Something you learned?
I learned relating to the museum, I learned that I really like learning kind of about like modern events, I guess. With like, one of them was the 1987 Challenger explosion, and I guess I kind of really enjoyed learning about that. I don't exactly know why, but I really liked it. And then like, they had a whole exhibit on the Berlin Wall, which I found really interesting. I didn't know anything about that, and I found it to be really cool. And then all the monuments there were incredible. Like, probably my favorite monument was the Martin Luther King Jr. monument, and it had like a giant stone sculpture with Martin Luther King's like face carved on it, and I found that really interesting. It had a bunch of quotes going around it. It's pretty cool.
Something you would change for next year?
Change. I agree with Alex with like time span. Like, I remember we had stopped into the Museum of Natural History, and I think we only had like 30 minutes there, and we really only got to see a couple things. So with that, I would probably add a little more time, if that would be possible, to the trip.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
James?
Alright, my favorite part of the trip was the museum and the Natural History Museum. And for things I would change next year, I think we should change the time span of what Andrew and Alex said. I'd say maybe another day to the trip, or at least some more time in the museums, because we only had 3 choices and we only got to go to 2 of them. And then you have the Natural History Museum, which we had like 30 minutes in. Honestly, I think we should have more choices about like the 2 pick out of the 3. I think we should have a lot more than that, because some kids might not find that interesting.
Something you learned?
Something I learned was the dedication of some people in the government who risked their lives to save ours. We saw a lot of memorials on the trolley ride, and my favorite was the Vietnam Memorial.
Thanks, James.
Thank you. In addition, on the trip, the museum, which is interesting because we didn't think that we were going to get in because the museum is in danger of closing down for financial reasons. And it tends to be one of the favorite places that we go to with the kids. We also did Madame Tussauds. We went, and each time, we started this actually last year, trying to do an evening, more cultural experience, and we went and saw something called Sheer Madness. I don't think I've ever heard these guys laugh as hard as they did during this show. And then, of course, we try and balance it with all of the educational components. Last year, we went to the African American Museum, which is an amazing, amazing, museum. However, they're not taking any reservations right now because they are so overbooked. So I feel really fortunate in that we were able to get that first trip in there, because and we squeaked in last year with a little bit of help and a lot of strings being pulled, but we're unfortunately not able to do it this year. We have decided to do it again next year, this time, for a variety of reasons. One, the weather really held up for us. It was pretty mild, which was great. Two, it sets the tone for the school year, allows the students to see the teachers as really human beings and that they are real, and not just teachers. And also allows us to get to know the teachers, to get to know the students. And so that's really great for us. It's also less crowded when we go down in October, which was great. When we went in May, it was just unbelievably crowded. So, do you have any questions for our students?
Have any of you been to Washington D.C. before, or was this your first time?
This was my first time.
Your first time?
My second time.
Your second time? Second time. Okay.
We do have quite a few that come that it is their first time.
So I have a question for the three of you, and maybe you can just share that maybe some of the feedback that you perhaps heard from your classmates when you're just talking about how jam-packed it was and you were rushed. And let's say next year that the students can't stay an extra day. Are there any parts of this that you think, well, I would rather have not done that and would have wanted to spend more time, or this would have been better if we could have spent more time at this? So are there things here that you think you could have opted out of to focus on things? Yes.
Probably Madame Tussauds. That was probably my least favorite place out of all the places that we went, all the natural history museums and everything.
Okay.
Just didn't seem appealing to me.
Okay. And what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd probably say Madame Tussauds too. I mean, we did have one like fun experience, which was the escape room, which I had never been to before. And I think Madame Tussauds was like, we got to see it and it was fun. And some of the kids got like their hand waxed, which was cool. But it wasn't really a learning experience, and we already had something that was like a lot more fun than that. So.
What about you, Andrew?
Unlike those two, I actually really enjoyed Madame Tussauds. I enjoyed seeing all of the famous people as wax figures. And honestly, probably I would, if we're only going to spend at least like 25 or 30 minutes there, probably just like cut out the Smithsonian natural history, just because we had so little time there.
Okay. That's good.
The other piece that we had on this trip too is we did have a panel discussion. Last year we were able to get a tour of Georgetown. This year we switched things up because we were going to a different escape room. And so we actually had two of our alumni meet us. Alex, I can't draw a blank on Alex's last name, begins with a C, and Liz Left, who are both working down in DC.
Oh, Alex Cottle.
Cottle,
Yeah.
thank you,
Yeah.
yes. So Alex is actually working with immigrants and helping them to get established here. And Liz Left is working with a Jewish organization down there and doing some lobbying and some fundraising, et cetera, for them and community outreach. So it was really cool to have both of those alumni come and speak to our students. I think the speaking part was good, the food part there was not so good. But we live and we learn, right? You would think that the Kennedy Center would have decent food, but.
I have a question for you guys. So you were with your classmates morning, noon, and night for like 3 or 4 days, right? What was that like? And was it a good thing, a bad thing, or something, something else?
I kind of felt like my rooming choices, they were kind of annoying because I got very little sleep.
How about you guys?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think there was like a couple of the kids in our group just like up all night, just like saying the same things over and over again. It was a little frustrating.
Yeah, I actually had some of my friends in my room when we all went to bed fairly early. But some of the times, like when we were going around to museums or something like that, a lot of the kids, like, and especially some of the certain ones, a lot of the kids would be fooling around. And some of the like nicer ones, like the ones you had to pay more respect to, like the Vietnam Memorial. And when we were trying to learn, or like a teacher or a staff member of the museum was talking to us. So that was pretty annoying when you were actually trying to get something out of it.
Were there positive things that you were able to gain from spending all that time
Yeah.
with your classmates?
We got all of or I personally got a lot of their opinions on some of the things. Like, there's this one statue I remember going on the tour, the night trolley tour. It was the last stop we did. We had to, look at the statue and figure out some of the things, like how many arms there were, because it was a bundle of Army soldiers. And so it was kind of fun to see, their, perspectives and walk around there and see how many arms they felt were in there, so. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you for supporting us in this. It was certainly handed to us, but it has been an absolutely amazing experience for both the teachers and the students alike. So we look forward to creating our agenda for next October, which we've already begun working on that. One of the things that we're hoping to do is to lay the wreath at Arlington Cemetery. So we have started that process already. So keep your fingers crossed that we can make that happen. James?
Instead of the FBI building, what about the White House?
Yes, we actually are thinking, not the FBI, but instead of Capitol, going to the White House instead. We have some ties, there's some connections there, so we're looking to pull some strings.
Excellent. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, we're all
Great
set.
job.
Thanks, guys.
Next up on the agenda is the Component School Districts Advisory Committee meeting held on Thursday, November 27th. Jeff has a 30-minute PowerPoint for us.
Yeah. You remember last time. No, we don't have a 30. But, no, I do have some notes on it, and I came into it sort of as a layperson, and this committee is made up of primarily superintendents and principals, some board members, but a lot of people who are very familiar with BOCES and the services that are offered. But what I found out was not all of them. So there are a lot of things that BOCES does offer that even people who work with them on a full-time basis aren't really either taking advantage of or even aware of. So that was one of the things that came out of it. And I think this was not just a presentation from them to us, but it was an interaction. So they asked our opinion about what they can do better. And one of the things that came out of it I thought was really good was, I think it was fairly unanimous that they needed to push information out more to the component districts about what they do, and how the districts can take advantage of it, and also beyond the board level and beyond the administration level, but into the communities. Because in addition to CTE and other like career technology stuff, there's all kinds of shared services which we know about. We buy some of them, but also there's adult education and a lot of other programs that BOCES offers that I think some schools districts take a lot of advantage of, and others take less of. And then the whole adult ed piece, I think, would be fantastic. They even talked about doing some of that even out into the component districts as opposed to in Saranac Lake where most of them take place. So overall, I'm glad I went. I'm going to continue to go. It was really informative. As someone coming as a lay person, not as a school, being involved in education, it was quite impressive. And I have to say that the food was extremely impressive. I kind of went in with very low expectations, and I have to say I was really impressed. And I guess one final thing is one of the things that they talked about doing was kind of taking the show on the road and bringing some of these programs to component schools at not just job fairs, but different events that go on at schools, and like have cosmetology do nails and have people in culinary do cooking at certain things. I thought that was kind of a neat idea. So that was kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah, and I don't have that much more to add. I think the positive piece that Jeff mentioned of fostering conversations is something to really highlight. I think they did a nice job trying to foster conversations. They didn't allow us all to sit together, so I wasn't at Jeff's table.
We were opposite ends of the
So
room.
we were separated, and I think that did sort of encourage people to reach beyond their comfort zone. On the other side, I guess I just wish there were more component board members there, because I knew most of the people there. Most of them were administrators or BOCES board members. And there weren't too many. I think you were one of the few
Probably 2 or 3.
that were coming right out of the component district boards. So I thought you were a key player. There were 1 or 2 others, 2 or 3 others from other districts. They were key players because you know, most people who are in administration or on the BOCES board are familiar with the programs, and so it was really interesting to hear people's take on things who weren't as familiar. Personally, I wasn't familiar with that exact program that you mentioned, so there were some things for me there too.
And where this advisory committee came from was pretty much Lake Placid School District questioning the administrative budget of the BOCES, looking for specifics and looking for explanations of how the budget's derived, why does it differ from component school district budgets. As you all know, they do not fall under the tax cap, so we do, the BOCES does not. So did they give any future agenda? Are they going to get into any of the financial, the spending aspects of it, do you know?
We didn't really talk about that. We did talk about the next meeting, which was, I don't know if we have an exact date yet.
And the goal was to put the next meeting, the proposal was to put it on the same day, the same place as the annual meeting, so that, you know, you combine efforts of, you know, one being before, one being after. That didn't seem to be well received. I mean, people thought that was going to be too long at night. And so my guess is it'll be around that time, which is also around budget time. They didn't really put together the agenda. I mean, I made a recommendation just in my, you know, we were able to hand out some suggestions, and one was to, you know, make sure that that's, you know, an agenda item. So we'll see how that goes.
And there's a couple packets floating around here that they presented, and there's a lot of good information in there. Yeah, there's one there and there's one here. You know, just take a look at it. But I was really impressed. That was very well done.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
And I'll put those on the shelf over here, so if you don't get a chance to look at it tonight, you want to come in and just look through it.
Any questions for those that attended? Okay. Superintendent report.
Sure. Before I start to speak, I want to honor 2 of our members with certificates. And that would be 2 certificates for Colleen Locke, who completed New York State mandated Gov 101 New School Board Member Academy for 6 hours. And New York State mandated FIS 101 Fiscal Oversight Fundamentals for 6 hours. That would be 12 hours. Wow.
Good times. Thank you, Roger.
And Mark Spear for also Fiscal 101 and Gov 101, 12 total hours of New York State mandated hours with the School Board Association. Congratulations. So the calendar's catching up with the weather outside, and that means it's December. You know, the holidays are a busy time in the schools, and so I just want to share with you what's happening in December as we approach the holiday break, and of course the transition to the new year in January when we come back and start again. So this is a time when we continue to work on substantive work in the school district. You know, classes go on, programs go on, initiatives go on, but we also combine that with some celebrations and some fun. So first, some of those initiatives. So even at this time of year, we do continue to work hard on curriculum planning and improvement. So future planning is well underway. I mentioned that to you at the last meeting. We have teams and departments meeting to look ahead and plan for ongoing improvement. And that's really improvement for now, but also for next year. And starting today, we had school level meetings, which means that now we have administrators and counselors, people who have some more broad oversight, working with the ideas that come from the grade level teams and the department teams. So that's an exciting initiative. I think every year it's very collaborative, and often we come out the other side with some really good ideas, improvements for the future that we will share with the board once it's all done, most likely in the spring. So that's future planning. In addition, our math curriculum team continues to work together to develop a K-12 document that outlines all math content at every level. That means K-12 broken down into practices that are infused across all grade levels. It includes timeline targets for reaching instructional objectives. It's quite detailed, and I just wanted to mention to you the kind of effort that's going on. So many thanks to the math curriculum team that's been working on that. Tammy Casey, Stacy Martin, who's first grade teacher at Lake Placid Elementary, Amy Kramer, who's fourth grade teacher at Lake Placid Elementary, and Haley Fermonte, who is seventh grade teacher at the middle school, Tammy Casey being this year an eighth grade teacher, but traditionally a high school math teacher. So we cover a lot of ground with that committee. And then it also, of course, gathers from and includes the input from other members of the faculty. So another really important curriculum. We also have some of our school and district-wide committees that are meeting. One, some of you are on, the Health and Safety for Building and Grounds team. That meets later this week, right? Thursday? Thursday.
That's at 3?
3
Yes.
And then the Wellness Committee, which I think you're chairing that?
We're meeting next week.
You'll be meeting next week, a week from Thursday.
I guess it's a committee.
Yeah, okay. So.
I invited people.
Yes. And then I also want to share with you another effort that's been going on in the district. This is, we've been a part of Clarkson University led team. It's called Lead for Community. That is guided by Clarkson faculty working closely with Clarkson students. And then they are establishing a baseline for 4 municipalities: school district, village, town, and ORDA. And that baseline is to establish a class have been involved. We've had the environmental class involved. I've been involved. The Clarkson team is presenting their plan on Monday at 4 p.m. across the street at ORDA for anybody who's interested in attending. They'll also present it, I think, at Clarkson the week after that. And I hope it'll be recorded. So the work that's going on, we should see that continue with future groups of students and future Adirondack semesters following through with these efforts.
Where are they doing the presentation? Or do you know the room number?
I don't know the room. Yeah.
Is that public?
We're putting it in the newsletter.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think it was even in the last newsletter.
It was in the paper, I know that. I
Yeah.
just read it. Okay.
So, lots of serious initiatives continuing to happen despite being in the midst of the holiday time of the year. But this is also an athletic time of year, so our athletic schedule's in full swing. We have regular basketball games, hockey games, and while the ski teams have had the opportunity to practice recently, which is wonderful, they haven't started their competitions yet, but those will start soon as well. It's also a musical time of year. So tomorrow night, if you're looking for a good event to come see, the middle school winter concert is at 7 p.m. in the middle high school auditorium. So that will be followed a week later by the high school winter concert, so that's Wednesday, December 12th, same time. The middle school chorus will also participate in this Saturday's village tree lighting ceremony. And then the elementary school's holiday concert, and this is for grades 3, 4, and 5, that will be Monday, December 17th at 6:30 p.m. That might be the one event of the year that fills the auditorium. So kind of exciting. Other celebrations are elementary school students will be celebrating the season in a number of ways. Here are some examples. They have a day at Whiteface Lodge next Wednesday. They'll also enjoy their annual holiday shopping day next Friday. That's December 14th. And then they have their Polar Express Day on Wednesday the 19th. You might remember these if you've had children go through. They're real favorites amongst the kids. The Science Olympiad season is also moving forward. And that would include a upcoming competition. I believe this is the first competition of the year. I always look at Jeff because he's a key player in the Science Olympiad world.
I hang out
but
there.
you're going to.
They allow me to hang out.
Yes, but they'll be going to Fayetteville Manlius High School, which is in Syracuse area this weekend, Friday night, Saturday, for their first competition of the year. And there'll be more where that comes from. There's a late January regional competition, and then depending on how we do there, there's a state competition in March, I believe. And then finally, on Thursday, the 20th, that's the last day of school before the holiday break, the high school will welcome back graduates for a panel discussion with juniors and seniors about what their experiences have been in college, in the military, on the job. And they'll share that with juniors and seniors, and hopefully with administrators and any board members who would like to attend. That is next Thursday. That's the same day they also have their senior dinner, and that's the big turkey meal that I believe the Alumni Association is very closely involved with as well. So maybe some of you alums are also familiar with that one. But we do have a meeting before then, so maybe there'll be more to talk about then. We have our next meeting is on, what is it, the 18th? The 18th. So we still have one more meeting before the school breaks for the holiday break. And that's everything. Any questions for me?
Very busy.
Thanks. It is busy times.
Thank you. Moving on, information for the board. We have 2 items under the information for the board, one of which is the draft of the 2019-2020 school calendar. Anybody have any questions on that or comments?
That's gonna be another late year, by the looks of it.
Not as late as this year, right? So I think on this one, let's see, is it the 26th is the last, was the first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the date is the same, but this year, unfortunately, the Regents' schedule came out where the last day was the Wednesday. And that kind of throws everybody off. So next year, we're back to the traditional Friday, which is the 26th, yes. So, and ending at a little bit later date actually does change in some ways, and also starting early, because this proposal, again, this is a draft. This draft has us starting school on the 5th for students, but the 3rd for faculty. And that does leave for a little bit extra wiggle room in the middle, because we do have it 184 days that we schedule.
Thank you. Linking goals with agenda items.
Community outreach maybe with our, the response plan hearing at the beginning of our,
The safety plan?
yeah. Student presentation, students first and foremost.
That also falls under leadership. Item 4. Thank you. It was on last time, but the advisory committee
Yeah, I didn't even score that one.
is under finance. Go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say also, under the middle school liaisons, that also that falls under goal number 2.
Okay.
Certainly.
Thank you. Bring them back, it covers all sorts of things.
It does really, and then 1 as well, going to
Yeah,
that. That one gets covered a lot.
We'll be talking about under old business, the board survey, which would fall under the leadership. And then the 2 ad hoc committees, which we'll be discussing later. All under our second goal. Anybody have anything else? None? Move right along. Discussion part of the meeting. First item is the super eval, the superintendent's evaluation. At the November 20th meeting, this board approved the purchase of super eval, and tonight we're going to discuss how to proceed with gaining individual online access to NISBA superintendent evaluation. And Karen, are you going to cover this?
No.
No? Okay.
I did give all of you little pieces of paper that have your login and your, Liam, yours is,
You got it, Mike.
pick up that blue thing.
Did I?
No, right here, oh, it's all packets for me.
That book's for you. Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, so when you log into it, it will automatically ask you to change your email. There's a little online video that you can watch. It explains how the process works.
It's part of our leads effort.
Yes.
Serve.
I have it again.
Any other questions for Karen? No, she put a note in there from the vice president of the company, so.
Yeah,
Great. And if we misplaced ours,
I have them.
good.
Except for I think you.
Hypothetically, of course.
That's right, if someone on the board does.
Okay, ad hoc committees for the two topics that are on our goals, and number one being the school bus routes and the second being the community service requirements. We had discussed these and decided that they'd best be served under an ad hoc type of committee, just getting a small group together and meeting. So the two ad hoc committees are being put together, and we're looking for volunteers to serve on those two committees. And again, one is with a transportation system, the bus routes, and the other being community service program and graduation requirements. So we'd like at least one representative from the board. Maybe, Roger, are you putting these together, or?
So Dana's putting together the transportation
Okay.
committee, and I will be putting together the community service committee.
Okay.
And, we have different, in some ways, maybe this is just informational, but it could also be more than that. So it's an opportunity to dig in a little deeper than we would normally do with a brief presentation at the board meeting. And so we'll see where we're going.
Do you have any, input as to how often these committees would be meeting, or?
Could be once.
Right.
Could be a couple of times. I really don't know. So both of these emerged from the board goals originally, to raise these topics and to see if we're doing them as well as we could be or should be doing them. So, my goal, for example, with the community service is to ask, probably Teresa Lindsay or another of our key people at the Midland High School. That's where the requirement is. Plus Patty McConvey, if she's available, who oversees the community service project. These are the people who know the best how it's working, not at the broad level, but on the ground detail. And so there were some questions that were raised earlier in the year about it, and so I think it's just a good chance to see how's it going. Raise some of those questions from that. Maybe you're coming from outside the school, maybe just from individual board members or individual community members. I don't know, and just to see is this something we want to go into deeper? So it could be that it goes more beyond one meeting, but I guess it's possible not to also.
I volunteer for the community service on Charter.
I'll do the bus routes.
For the bus routes, we're hoping to meet next week, so if anyone is interested, and I think that was kind of the goal, is hopefully meet next week, and that way we could have some type of report out in the next board meeting on the 18th.
Do you think the community service, Roger, would be more apt to meet after school in that 3:30 frame, or just to kind of keep it there?
Oh, we could probably make it work in the middle of the day too.
Okay,
Kind of depends. I might actually take your lead on that.
Okay, I can be flexible if you need me to.
Okay.
So-
Why don't you think about in the next, I don't know, see, we'll be ambitious.
Okay,
We'll see, if we could go along the lines of what Dana's proposing
Okay.
for the other group, and see if there's a time or a couple of days that might work for you, and then I'll see if I can't get
okay,
people together for that.
okay, good.
Okay.
If If anybody else is interested, just let Heather or Roger know. So I can now say that my goal is that the meetings are scheduled before the holidays, so if they get completed before the holidays,
Don't get
kudos.
Very busy time.
I appreciate that.
You've already got a win there.
Once you get the win, you go for more. That's right. Next on the agenda, minutes of the board meeting. That was under the consent. Personnel, we had the teaching staff non-maternal parent leave request, which was consent. The teaching staff maternity leave request, which was under the consent. Additional action items, budget calendar was under the consent.
Excuse me, Rick.
Yes.
I added 8C,
Okay.
So if you don't log out and log back in, you
or
won't
you
see
can
any
just
changes.
refresh.
Yep. I'm dealing with a new computer that's not cooperating. So.
Sure.
Yep. In this case, I can say 100%. I can see the agenda. Okay. My apologies. So under 8C, thank you. Okay. So upon the recommended action, upon recommendation of the superintendent, approval of the attached resolution, whereas the district is determined has determined a need for a Dean of Students position at the secondary level for the remainder of the 2018-2019 school year. And whereas Tammy Casey has expressed interest in such a position as well as a sound background and knowledge of the necessary duties and responsibilities of such position. And whereas the Lake Placid Teachers Association is agreeable to the filling of such position by one of its members, that being Ms. Casey. Now therefore the board hereby approves Ms. Tammy Casey as Dean of Students beginning January 1st, 2019 for the remainder of the 2018-19 school year in accordance with the attached memorandum of agreement. Approves the stipend of $7,500 to be paid to Ms. Casey for the assignment of Dean of Students, and approve a stipend of $7,500 to be paid to Teresa Lindsay for the assignment of mentoring Ms. Casey and serving as the lead building administrator, and authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute the memorandum of agreement and ensue compliance with its terms. May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Thank you, Martha. Second?
I'll second.
Jeff, seconds.
Did you second? You second.
Do you think, Roger, that it's clear enough to the public that this is not an additional position as a Dean of Students, that it is, in essence, replacing the high school principal, that the public's not going to think we're now hiring a third administrator?
If I may add, temporarily.
Yeah,
Something, I'm
temporary.
just wondering if there's,
Yeah.
should be some different verbiage there that
Would you want to put in there, Karen, replacing interim principal Ernest Witkowski?
I think
Yeah, I think it's important.
Could we insert
wise.
that? Sure.
We can do it
now, and then-
So do you want it where it says, whereas the district has determined a need for a Dean of Students position at the secondary level for the remainder of the school year, replacing Mr. Witkowski? There?
I would put it actually, approves Ms. Tam Casey as Dean of Students beginning January in accordance with the attached memorandum, replacing Ernest Witkowski.
Where do you want to put that? Approved after that one here?
How about after, sorry for the hesitation, after Ms. Tammy Casey as Dean of Students, replacing interim principal Ernest Witkowski.
Yeah.
That right? Look right.
Yes, I think so. It's late in the day, my view's going blurry.
Okay, well, you're a resident attorney.
Yeah.
We rely on you.
Should we say while continuing to search for a permanent
do that, just, you guys want to add that in too?
I don't know if that
I don't know,
needs to
that's
go in the
what we said.
resolution, but
We
Well,
can state it here. as
state
part
it
of the
here,
conversation.
Yeah, all right, so that's part of the conversation then. That's the intention.
if that were correct.
Yes.
We have to
No.
are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay, please vote. So 7-4-0 against, the motion passed. So now we're on to additional action items. The budget calendar approval was under consent, and then we have the emergency response plan approval. Earlier in the evening, we had the public hearing for the district-wide plan. And we'll now take this up under the action items. The recommended action is upon recommendation of the superintendent, approve the attached emergency response plans for the district, elementary school, and middle and high school. May I have a motion to approve these plans?
Yes.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll second.
Thank you, Liam. Any discussion? If you can vote, please.
Yes.
So 7-4-0 against, the motion passes. Special education was under the consent agenda. And we move on to the adjournment phase of the meeting. Next meeting, dates and location, December 18th, right here at 6:30. January 1st meeting has been canceled, in spite of my best efforts to have that meeting. January 15th, 6:30 right here in Lake Placid, and then February 19th at 6:30 here. February 5th, did I say 15th? Where the heck did that? So January 15th, February 5th. Old agenda topics, school bus routes and the community service requirements are under the ad hoc committees. Board retreat, we touched on that a bit last meeting, but without Martha's presence, we sort of tabled that. Is there any discussion on that you'd like to bring forth?
From the training that Colleen and I went through, and also the convention that Roger and the rest of us had attended, I just came to the conclusion that we ought to have some sort of gathering where we are outside of the formal meeting situation, and we can get to know each other a little bit better and work on what is our North Star as a board, as an organization, and think about leadership and just think about the larger issues in a more strategic way. I had some ideas for how that could work at a minimal cost.
Okay. We can discuss and put it on, perhaps put it on the
That's a good
agenda.
agenda. We'll
Yes,
go
a good
back to the
agenda.
agenda item for the discussion.
Yes. Yeah. So that'll be on the next agenda under discussion. Colleen, the elementary playground was here, and my suggestion was, and I'm not sure if it was accepted or not, but we'll put that up to the safety committee, and you had a plan, as you announced earlier, so thank you. Let's see, board self-evaluation. I have the board self-evaluations here, and I apologize for my archaic methods, but they're on paper. Does everybody own a pen? The first sheet is the policy on board self-evaluation, and then the governance team self-evaluation survey. So if you could please complete that, it's a lot of check boxes, and then there's some open-ended questions, 4 of which in the back. If you could please complete this. And Karen, would you like these?
Yes.
Or would you like me to compile them?
No, you can send them to me.
Okay. So, how many are there? Got 3?
And when are we to return these?
I need another one though.
If we can get these by next meeting, is that too? By next meeting?
Do you want to bring them to the next meeting or have them?
You can either get them to you, or I'd like them all turned in before next meeting, and then the first meeting after the holidays, we'll review them. Any new agenda items? Anybody would like to bring?
Yeah, I've got one. Last week I sent an email out to the board regarding, just, again, part of our strategic goal is better communication with the community. And the Adirondack Daily Enterprise is one of the papers that we post our meetings in. And it just seemed to be a little bit of trouble finding that, because I believe it's in the calendar section, right? And we wondered if we could maybe put like a quarter-page ad. That's something we want to talk about as a board, but we would like to get input from the paper in terms of what they, could do to help us get the message out better to the community, because we'd like to see more people here at the meetings and participation. So just in that spirit, that I think I'd like to put that as an agenda item for our next meeting and see what we can do to maybe move that forward. If in fact we do it at all.
Sure.
Okay.
No, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Do they appear, the announcements in the 2 school newspapers?
They do, yeah.
Newsletters?
I believe so.
Yeah. Could we use the signage at the elementary school, even if it's just periodically putting it up once a month, school board meeting, 6:30?
I mean, I've resorted to going out and grabbing people off the street, and it sometimes works.
I do think, though, that overall, I think we do a pretty good job of making it known, whether or not people choose to come or not. I think it's somewhat easy to figure out that it's simply a matter of calling Karen and asking when the next meeting is, but I don't know, it just,
The reason I bring it up is because this is kind of a good example. This BOCES meeting I went to last week, just really shined a light on that very fact. Was here it is right in my face, twice a month for the last 4 years, and how little I really knew about what these guys do. And now that there's really kind of making an effort to put that out there, and granted, I made an effort to go, but I think it's helpful to push it, and as well as just expect the people to take the initiative.
yeah. We could even use the Order Community Board, too,
Yeah.
if we wanted to put it.
So,
Or
and
Karen?
those are just my thoughts on that. If we could push more, it's like everybody else, put the information out a little bit better. If we can improve, good.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think we gotta push all forms of media all the time.
As long as it's free.
I think parents really enjoy having a newsletter on Facebook,
yeah.
on the school's website. It's really accessible. Whomever is putting that up there, it's there routinely, so you're always getting the news feeds, which is great. Probably coming from Karen. So it's, you can be in the know pretty easily, I think.
Great, thank you. Adjournment phase, recommended action, motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Second? Comment?
Sure.
Does everybody want to stay here?
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's only 7:30.
7-4-0 against, 7:30 is our close. Thank you very much, everyone.
I have another teacher.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yep.